Good evening, and I'm very interesting discussion on what the RBI is now doing. So if you notice, friends, sometime back, the cooperative banks were brought within the ambit of the Reserve Bank of India, and there was a lot of talk on housing finance companies coming under the ambit of RBI from NHB, and that's now become a reality. So RBI is gradually being nudging all the regulators to ensure that we have a uniform regulator that's more in tune with what the government also felt to ensure that the financial services sector are governed by one uniform regulator. And what we have now, the proposed RBI guidelines for housing finance companies, is much in that direction. So moving on, I would thank Sundararajan and Jugal for their efforts and Sundar as well, our team, to get this presentation for us today. And let me just switch off the make it easier. Yes. So these are some of the terms which we have used in the equation. Um, CRAR is capital risk weighted ratio. I think the rest we shall see as and when we get to the presentation in this regard. This is the agenda for the difference. So very interesting topic. One is about the housing finance companies, the regulations of where they are, and the transfer of the regulation from RBI to from HFC to RBI, and from National Housing Board to RBI, and then the proposed changes of RBI. What are the definitions and the case for net own fund requirement, and the distinction between systematically important and non-systematically important, and what are the various differences between the specific current regulations and what is proposed, and of course some relevant statistics in this regard, and we will also look at what is the way forward. Yes. So typically when we look at housing finance companies, there are type of non-banking finance companies, and which primarily deal in financing housing loans. Now let's try and get to the specifics in some time. The HFCs were completely regulated by the National Housing Bank, NHB, which is a statutory body until 9th of August 2019. And some of the notable HFCs were HDFC Limited, LIC Housing Finance, India Bulls, etc. And on account of irregularities which were being faced by the housing finance sector, whenever there is a case for concern, might behind the transaction and ensure that these scenarios are not taken too far to affect the retail investors. So the government felt that there is a need to transfer the regulation of HFCs from NHB to RBI. And on this account, the central government in Finance Act 2009, 2019, sorry, amended the provisions of 29 of NHB Act by replacing the significant powers vested in NHB with the RBI. So going forward, RBI now has the larger regulatory responsibility towards housing finance companies. Again, when we look at, just excuse me for a sec, and how has it happened? So when we look at Finance Act 2 of 2009 amended the NHB Act, it moved certain powers of regulating HFCs to RBI. The central government, by its notification dated 2 of 2000, August 2019, appointed the effective date on which this transfer shall come into effect. And consequent to which, HFCs will now be categorized as NBFCs, one of the different types of NBFCs. And RBI will carry out a review of the regulatory framework and come out with revised regulations in due course. And in the meantime, HFC will continue to comply with regulations and instructions issued by NHB till the time the RBI takes over. And NHB will continue to carry over supervision of HFCs, and HFCs will continue to submit various returns to NHB as before. The grievance redressal will still NHB. So this is where you effectively have NHB to some compliances and grievance addressing will happen, but the effective regulator would be RBI. So the Housing Finance Institution, which is a company desirous of making an application uh, for registration under 29A of the NHB Act, may approach the DNBS. So that's what we call Department of Non-Banking Services in RBI. All NBFCs come within that ambit. So going forward, that would be the basis in which uh, the regulator, any new entity has to work with. You don't need to go to NHB, you have to go with Housing Finance, you have to go with RBI. Moving on. What are the proposed changes for HFC's post RBI takeover? So if you look at it, the RBI has reviewed the extent regulatory framework and identified certain changes. One, defining providing finance for housing or housing finance and principal business and qualifying assets for HFCs. Increasing the minimum net owned fund requirement, amending Tier 1 and Tier 2 capital definitions, and addressing the issue of double financing, which we'll be seeing in some time. Classifying HFC as systematically important and otherwise. That's again similar to how NBFCs are classified by RBI. And Reserve Bank's directions on liquidity risk framework, NCR, securitization, etc., shall now be made applicable to HFCs as well. So, what are the new regulations for HFCs going forward? So, reintroducing the dual regulations, HFCs were granted exemption from Chapter 3B of RBI Act by 1997, effectively where they were regulated by RBI. But the RBI, by its gazette notification dated November 2019, had withdrawn the exemption granted to HFC. So now they would have both housing NHB, National Housing Bank, as well as RBI, with whom they might have to work with going forward. Of course, the boundary lines are very clearly drawn. RBI will be the super regulator for housing finance companies. So providing finance for housing or housing finance. So the RBI proposed to have an inclusive definition of the term providing finance for housing or housing finance. So housing finance or providing finance for housing means financing for purchase, construction, reconstruction, renovation, repairs of residential dwelling units, which includes the following: loans to individual or group of individuals, including cooperative societies, for construction and purchase of new dwelling units, loans to individuals for purchase of old dwelling units, loans to individuals for purchasing old or new dwelling units by mortgaging existing dwelling units, loans to individuals for purchase of plots for construction of residential units, provided the construction happens within 3 years, and loans for renovation or construction of existing dwelling units, lending to public agencies, including State Housing Board, for construction of residential dwelling units will fall within the ambit of providing finance for housing. Fairly comprehensive. And loans to corporates by agencies through loans for employee housing, loans for construction of educational health, social, cultural, or other institutional centers which are part of the housing project, loans for construction of houses and related infrastructure within the area meant for improving slums, loan for slum improvement schemes, lending to builders for construction of residential units. So all of the loans, including those for furnishing dwelling units, loan, mortgage property, any purpose other than for acquiring or buying a new unit or renovation, will be treated as non-housing. So the categorizing between housing and non-housing is now fairly clear. I mean, talk from the RBI's perspective, consequent change. So the next change what they've done is in principal business and qualifying assets. So if you look at principal business, at least 50% of the net of HFC are in the nature of qualifying assets, and at least 75% of qualifying assets should be towards individual housing loans. So earlier HFCs were recognized if one of their principal objects was providing finance for housing, directly or indirectly was met. So if you look at qualifying assets, it refers to housing finance or providing housing finance. So if we look at it, friends, so So if an entity, an NBFC has 1,000 crores, uh, 50% should be qualifying assets, which is 500 crores should be towards uh, housing finance loans, of which 75% should be towards individuals. And net assets, it means total assets other than cash and bank balances and money market instruments. And 29A of NHB Act, no HFC shall commence housing finance as its capital business unless there's a certificate of registration obtained by RBI from RBI, and it has a net owned funds of 10 crores. So, and it is now proposed to be increased to 20 crores by RBI very soon. So, such HFCs which do not fulfill the principal business criteria will be treated as an NBFC, investment and credit companies. So, that's the scene now. If you don't comply with the regulations of the net owned fund and the portfolio criterion, you would be reclassified as investment and credit companies, and they might have to approach RBI again for reclassification as HFCs. Again, application for such conversion should be submitted with all supporting documents, uh, similar to your what we do with any NBFC application with any loan NBFC. So, however, a phase timeline has been given to HFCs which do not presently fulfill. So, we're talking about smaller HFCs in terms of minimum net owned fund, but there would be issues for larger NBFCs in terms of fulfilling this 50% and 75% criterion. So, which is where by March 31st, 2022, the 50% net asset criterion has to be fulfilled. And for the 75%, so they've given time till 2024 March. So, where it can gradually grow from 50 to 60 to 75. And if you look at NBFC, investment and credit, it would come under the ambit of loan company, investment company, and asset finance company. You would not have the benefits of refinance of a HFC. So that's one big reason why NBFCs would still want to retain the HFC tag. So classification into systematically and non-systematically important HFCs. So it's again what we have with NBFCs as well, regular NBFCs. So within RBI, especially in the DNBS, Department of Non-Banking Services, we currently have a 500 crore threshold of book for an NBFC, which is systematically important or otherwise, and the reporting mechanism is very different, and the overseeing mechanism is also very different. So, in this backdrop, a similar classification is now being brought for NBFCs as well. So presently, HFC regulations are common irrespective of their asset size. But going forward, we would have a 500 crore threshold where NBFCs with 500 crores and above of book would be deemed as systematically important, and those below this 500 crore would be deemed as non-systematically relevant. And all the circulars regarding this would be made applicable to HFCs as well. Increase in net owned fund requirement. So NOF requirement in exercise of powers conferred under 29A, the RBI proposes to increase the NOF from 10 to 20 crores, and they've given a time frame that within 1 year it should be increased to 15, and then in 2 years they should beat this 20 crore criterion. Again, the aim is to ensure that you have entities of size getting into this space. And what is this net owned fund? It is the aggregate of paid up capital, paid up equity, and free reserves as per the latest balance sheet, less accumulated losses, deferred revenue, and less investments of such HFCs in shares of its subsidiaries and companies in the same group, and book value of debentures, bonds, outstanding loans, and advances made to and deposits with subsidiaries of such HFCs and companies in the same group to the extent such amount exceeds 10% of the above. So it is a fairly, what would I say, onerous requirement. But yes, the intent is to ensure smaller players are not in the fray any longer in the secured financing space. Harmonizing the definitions of tier 1 and tier 2 capital with that of the NBFCs. So tier 1 capital is a primary funding source of the NBFC, and it's an NBFC's highest quality capital base because it's fully available to cover losses, and it generally consists of owned fund and perpetual debt instruments. And tier 2 is a supplementary capital. The loss absorption capacity of tier 2 capital is lower than that of tier 1 capital. and it generally consists of subordinated debt, revaluation reserves, hybrid debt capital instruments, PDIs, etc. And it's a kind of debt instrument with no maturity date when we look at perpetual debt instrument. So, and the components are the same for both NBFCs and HFCs of tier 1 and tier 2, except for treatment of PDI, perpetual debt. And presently, PDIs are not considered as part of capital for HFCs, but for NBFCs they are. So that's a relief for institutions. And it's proposed to align the definition of both HFCs and NBFCs. So therefore, if you look at the changes, the perpetual debt instrument would now be regarded as part of the component of tier 1 and tier 2, but it can be treated only by non-deposit taking and systematically important HFC. So we're talking about HFCs in excess of 500 crores and beyond. PDIs or any other debt capital instrument in the nature of PDIs already issued by either by deposit taking HFCs or non-systematically important HFCs will be reckoned as tier 1 or tier 2 for a period up to 3 years, not beyond 3 years. And HFCs are treated as category of NBFCs for regulatory purposes. And investments in shares of other HFCs and also other NBFCs shall be reduced from the tier 1 capital to the extent it exceeds in aggregate, along with other exposures to group companies, 10% of the owned fund of HFC. So, public deposits and liquidity risk framework and liquidity coverage ratio. So, public deposits, the definition of public deposits as given by NHB. It exempts any amount received from NHB or any public housing agency from the definition of public deposit. This is very critical. But RBI proposes to align the definition of public deposit as under RBI Master Circular in consonance with NHB definition by exempting amount received by HFCs from NHB or any other public agency from the definition of public deposit. So the benefit of exemption still continues under the new regime. Liquidity risk framework and liquidity coverage ratio. So this was something which there was a lot of noise after the last year's NBFC crisis, where the government was pressured or the RBI was asked for a comment on why not regulate NBFCs like banks, because even though NBFCs don't take deposit, mutual funds are one of the largest subscribers to the bond papers of NBFCs. So there is an indirect retail investor interest. So the RBI proposed to extend the guidelines for NBFC on liquidity risk framework and LCR for liquidity coverage ratio for non-deposit taking HFCs with an asset crore of 100 crores and above, and all deposit taking HFCs. And it will be the responsibility of the board to ensure that the guidelines are adhered to and internal controls required are put in place. So that's another area of compliance which HFCs will now have to reckon with. And if you see the guidelines on liquidity risk management, there are many areas, including strong organizational setup process for identifying, measuring, monitoring, and controlling liquidity risk, a robust framework for comprehensively projecting cash flows, funding strategy that provides effective diversification, actively managing the collateral positions, conducting stress tests on regular basis, and publicly disclosing information on a quarterly basis. So guidelines on LCR, stock of high, what is LCR? Stock of high quality liquid assets divided by net cash outflows over the next 30 calendar days. So that would give you the liquidity coverage ratio. And the LCR shall continue to be at a minimum of 100% with an ongoing from effective December 2024. Until then, it would gradually progress, beginning from a minimum LCR of 30%. So you should at least have cash 30% of your cash outflow for the next 1 month. So that's where the LCR starts. So that's only to ensure that you don't foresee sudden shocks of liquidity with NBFCs. Group entities engaged in real estate business. So this is a cause for concern. So imagine a case where the entity raises money, funds the developer, and it also funds the borrower. So RBI under this says there's no question of double financing. You can only finance either the developer or the borrower. In order to address concerns on double financing due to lending to construction companies, within the group, and also to individuals purchasing flats from the latter. The HFC concerned may choose to lend at only one level. So, but it's only for group companies, not for everyone. So, if the HFC can either undertake an exposure on the group company in real estate business, or lend to retail individual home buyers in the project groups, but not to do both. And if the HFC decides to take any exposure in its group entities, such exposure cannot be more than 15% of the owned fund for a single entity and 25% of owned fund for all such group entities. So, as regards extending loans to individuals who choose to buy housing units from entities in the group, the HFC would follow an arm's length principle. So, when you look at your owned funds, which is required for this 25% threshold or 15%, you take paid up capital, CCPS, free reserves, balance, and share premium, and capital reserves, and you reduce accumulated losses and deferred revenue expenditure. So, that's how that gets calculated. Moving on, monitoring of frauds and information technology framework. This is again typical RBI requirement. So, with regard to frauds, there's a master circular on monitoring of frauds 2016, and which pertains to classification of frauds, monitoring, and reporting to the board, to police authorities, and RBI. And with a view to harmonizing all instructions pertaining to fraud monitoring, it's proposed to make these directions applicable to HFCs in place of present guidelines issued by NHB. All reports in the format given in these master directions of monitoring of frauds may, however, continue to be forwarded to NHB as it was done before. So it's not that NHB is completely out of the window. They would still be require. They would still be a reporting authority. And if you look at RBI's fraud monitoring instructions of 2016, any transaction of fraud exceeding 10 or 15, 5, 10,000 or 5,000 as the case may be, need to be reported. And there are multiple thresholds: less than 1 crore, more than 1 crore. Individuals, if the case exceeds 25 lakhs, need to be reported at various levels. So I'm not getting into the specifics, but these are added compliances for for HFCs going forward. And quarterly returns, review of frauds and cases, which should be invariably referred to the state police. Again, financial thresholds are being made available. Information technology framework. Again, we have the master direction of 2017, which is already applicable to NBFCs, will now be applicable to HFCs as well. It covers IT governance, IT policy, information secure, cyber security, IT operations, IS audit, BCP, and IT outsourcing. And the directions for asset side below 500 crores are also specifically provided. So you have both for systematically relevant and otherwise separately given. And this is the IT framework for NBFC sector. I'm not getting into it, but there are specific execution requirements for IT governance, IT policy, IT operations, IS audit, IT services outsourcing, and very minimal requirements for non-systematically relevant NBFCs, where it focuses on having IT systems with basic security aspects, a well-defined maker checker concept, system generated report, adequacy to file regulatory returns to RBI, and a business continuity plan, and an arrangement for backup of data. If you look at the other proposed changes here, it's not specified any specific guidelines on securitization. So it's proposed to bring all HFCs under the ambit of guidelines on securitization transaction as applicable to NBFCs, which are concerned in NBFC SI guidelines. And here, very detailed guidelines are given for all NBFCs, and we assume the same to be made applicable to HFCs as well under the revised regime. Lending against shares. So currently there are no guidelines in place for lending against shares and security of shares by HFCs. And for the sake of uniformity, it's proposed to extend instructions applicable to NBFCs to lend against the collateral of listed securities. So the same shall apply to HFCs as well. Outsourcing of financial services, very important. So what all they can and they cannot outsource. So the core, it shall not outsource core management functions. It shall put in place a comprehensive outsourcing policy, and shall not be owned by, or the outsourcing agency shall not be owned by or controlled by any director or of the HFC or their relatives. The board and the senior management of HFC shall play a crucial role in approving and reviewing outsourcing strategies. and the materiality of the outsourcing function needs to be determined. And typical, if you look at the sum and substance of the circular, is RBI doesn't want NBFCs to outsource core functions. So that's, and moving on. Foreclosure charges. Again, the guidelines pertaining to NBFCs shall apply here, and the Indian accounting standards, which were thus far applicable, which is Indian accounting Ind AS, shall now be applicable here. The prudential floor for expected credit loss (ECL) will be based on the extent instruction on provisioning applicable to HFCs. So if we were to look at the situation for HFCs prior to and post the RBI entry, the liquidity risk framework and LCR, the liquidity coverage ratio was, there was a guideline for asset liability management system, and that's now replaced by the new provisioning, new LRF and LCR by RBI. The monitoring of frauds, there was a circular guidelines on monitoring of frauds, which was earlier provided, and that's now being superseded by the RBI circular of 2016. IT framework exclusive HFC was guideline was prescribed by 2018 circular. That's now replaced by the Master Direction on Information Technology issued by RBI. Securitization, no guidelines, RBI guidelines. Lending against share, nothing specific. RBI has got directions. And on outsourcing of financial services and code of conduct, again, we have specific guidelines of RBI which will be operational in this regard. So, fairly comprehensive change for those who are in that space. And if you look at the major differences between the one, capital adequacy ratio is 12% for HFCs, 15% for NBFCs, and the risk weights are broadly categorized between 0 to 100%, whereas there it's 30 to 125%. And income recognition and asset classification provisioning norms, there are major differences in provisioning norms which are applicable to standard, substandard, and doubtful in HFCs. There, the provision was between 0.4 to 2%. Here, it's 15%, and for substandard, the requirement is 15%. For doubtful, the requirement is 25% to 100%. So, the norms on concentration of credit or investment, uh, there are credit concentration issues for HFCs and NBFCs, but NBFCs do enjoy certain benefits here compared to HFCs. The limits on exposure to commercial real estate and capital market. So the CRE by way of HFC's exposure to CRE, way of investment in land and building shall not be more than 20%, whereas the CME shall not be more than 40% of net worth, total exposure of which direct exposure should be 20% of net worth. There are no such limits prescribed for NBFC, so you're free to do whatever you want. The regulations on acceptance of public deposits for NBFCs, it's up to 5 years, whereas for HFCs, it's up to 10 years. So that could be a cause for concern. Ceiling on the quantum of deposits, 3 times of NOF for HFCs, which is 1.5 times of 1.5 times of NOF for NBFCs with minimum investment grade. So that's a case for concern. But one thing we must understand is RBI has been consistently bringing down the number of entities which were eligible to accept public deposits. Interest on premature repayment of deposits 1 to 4% below the prescribed rate for HFCs. It's 2 to 3% for NBFCs. And maintenance of liquid assets 13% for HFCs and 15% for NBFCs. So if we were to look at some very interesting numbers here at this point in time, friends, there are only 17 deposit taking HFCs in India. There are 83 non-deposit taking HFCs in India. And when we look at NBFCs, the non-systematically important NBFCs are 9,100 in number. So by and large, they are small, less than 500 crores. The non-deposit taking systematically important are 278. And deposit taking are just 69 in the country. And so if we look at it, the intent is to tighten the regulatory norms to improve transparency and reporting and early monitoring of frauds, and also with liquidity coverage ratio. At least NBFCs now will effectively have a roadmap to have liquid assets for at least 30 days commitments. So that would not give immediate shocks to the market. So it's a boon or a pain, only time will tell, but definitely given the fact that RBI has done a stupendous job over time in regulating the financial markets, I don't think we should worry. The HFCs look to be in safe hands. But the case for multiple regulators is always a cause for concern for the participant or the players in the industry. Only time will tell how that is, conflict gets resolved or that friction gets eased out. Thank you. These were some of our thoughts on this very interesting conversation. Hope to catch up sometime next week on another topic of relevance. Thank you.